The dog had killed 3 men. I knew this because Lily told me while we rolled silverware, her hands shaking so badly she dropped 2 forks. He rips out throats, she whispered. Just looks at them and waits for the command, and then, she made a slashing motion across her neck. I should have been scared. Any sane person would be. But sanity was a luxury I couldn't afford anymore, not with $87,000 in medical debt and a 19-year-old brother whose body was being pumped full of poison 3 times a week just to keep him alive. So instead of fear, I felt nothing. That was the thing about exhaustion. About working doubles at Han's Garden, morning shifts at the dry cleaner, and weekend overnights at the gas station on Figueroa. Eventually, your body stopped producing fear. It ran out, like everything else. Like money. Like hope. Like the time I used to spend sleeping before 4 hours a night became a luxury. I pushed through the back door into the alley, letting it slam behind me. The November air hit my face, cool and sharp, and I sucked it into my lungs like I was drowning. 5 minutes. That's all I needed. 5 minutes of silence before I went back in to mop floors and wipe down tables and pretend I hadn't heard the whispers that made the other waitresses pale. Kang Jae-sun is here. The name meant nothing to me when Mr. Han first said it. But the way his face went white, the way he gathered us in the kitchen and spoke in a voice I'd never heard before, low, urgent, terrified, that meant something. No mistakes tonight. No eye contact with anyone in the private room. No speaking unless spoken to. If any of you embarrass me, I will fire you on the spot and make sure you never work in the city again. Do you understand? We understood. Su-young, one of the older waitresses, crossed herself even though I was pretty sure she wasn't Catholic. Maria called in sick 5 minutes before her shift, her voice trembling through the phone. And Lily, sweet, gossipy Lily, told me about the dog. The dog that killed men. The dog that Kang Jae-sun brought everywhere like a shadow made of muscle and teeth. I didn't serve the private room. Mr. Han assigned that honor to himself and his most senior staff, the ones who knew how to keep their eyes down and their mouths shut. I worked the main floor, pouring water and ferrying plates and pretending I couldn't hear the occasional bursts of Korean from behind the gilded doors. Now those doors were closed, the private party still inside, and I was sitting on a milk crate in a dirty alley, wondering if Marcus had eaten dinner or if he'd spent another night too nauseous from the chemo to keep anything down. I closed my eyes. $87,000. The number lived in my chest like a second heartbeat. It pulsed when I woke up. It throbbed when I tried to sleep. It screamed at me every time I looked at my brother's face, thinner now, his cheekbones sharp, his beautiful dark skin gone ashy and gray. He was 19. He should have been in college, chasing girls, staying out too late, making stupid decisions. Instead, he was losing his hair in clumps and asking me why I looked so tired all the time. I'm fine, I always told him. Don't worry about me. I was so sick of pretending to be fine. A low growl cut through the silence. My eyes snapped open. He was 3 feet away, a massive Rottweiler, black as midnight, muscles coiled beneath scarred skin. His lips were pulled back, exposing teeth that looked like they could crush bone. His eyes were locked on me with the flat, empty stare of a predator assessing prey. Reaper. It had to be. The dog that killed men. I should have screamed. I should have run. I should have done something other than sit frozen on a milk crate, staring at the animal that was about to rip out my throat. But I didn't move. Not because I was brave. Not because I had some kind of death wish. But because in that moment, looking into those flat black eyes, I saw something familiar. The scars on his body weren't random. They were deliberate, the kind that came from being beaten into submission, from learning that violence was the only language that kept you alive. His left ear was shredded, half missing, like someone had torn it during a fight. His stance was aggressive, but beneath the aggression was something else. Fear. This animal had been tortured into becoming a weapon. And now he was standing in front of me, ready to kill, because that was the only thing he knew how to do. Hey, I said softly. The growl deepened. I'm not going to hurt you. I kept my voice low, even, the same tone I used when Marcus woke up crying from nightmares. I know you don't believe me. That's okay. You don't have to believe me. I didn't move. Didn't reach for him. Just sat there, my hands loose in my lap, my eyes steady on his. I'm tired, I told him. I'm so tired. I work all the time and it's never enough, and my brother is sick, and I don't know how to save him. I don't know how to save anyone. I can barely save myself. The growl faltered. You know what that's like, don't you? Being used up. Being made into something you never wanted to be. Reaper's head tilted. Just slightly. Just enough. I'm not scared of you, I whispered. I don't have enough fear left to be scared of anything. He stopped growling. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then, slowly, he stepped closer. His nose touched my hand, sniffing. I stayed still, let him smell the dish soap and sweat and exhaustion on my skin. He sat down beside me. And then, impossibly, he placed his massive head in my lap. A sound escaped my throat. Half laugh, half sob. I stroked his ears, careful to avoid the shredded one, and he sighed like he'd been waiting years for someone to touch him gently. Good boy, I murmured. You're not a monster. You're just hurt. I understand hurt. The back door exploded open. 3 men poured into the alley, guns drawn, shouting in Korean. I flinched, my hand tightening instinctively on Reaper's fur, and the dog tensed beneath my touch. But he didn't move. Didn't attack. Just pressed closer against my leg like he was protecting me. Then he appeared. Kang Jae-sun. I knew it was him before anyone said his name. The way the armed men parted for him, the way the air itself seemed to go still, this was a man who commanded fear without trying. He was tall. Over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that tapered to a narrow waist beneath a suit that probably cost more than I made in a year. His face was coldly beautiful, sharp cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass, dark eyes that held all the warmth of a frozen lake. Those eyes locked onto me. Onto his killer dog, docile as a lamb, sitting at my feet with his head in my lap. He said. Reaper didn't move. His eyes narrowed. Sharper this time. A command that expected obedience. Reaper whined. But he stayed pressed against me, his body trembling slightly. Something flickered across Jae-sun's face. Surprise? Disbelief? Whatever it was, it vanished almost instantly, replaced by an expression I couldn't read. He stepped closer. His men parted like water around a stone. He stopped directly in front of me, so close I could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that made my head spin. This close, I could see that his eyes weren't just dark. They were black. Bottomless. What's your name? His voice was soft. Quiet. And somehow, that made it more terrifying than if he'd shouted. Naomi. My voice didn't shake. I was proud of that. Naomi Carter. He tilted his head, studying me the way a scientist might study a new species. Or the way a predator might study prey it hadn't yet decided to kill. Tell me, Naomi Carter. He let the words hang in the air between us. What exactly are you? Before I could answer, before I could even think of an answer, one of his men stepped forward and whispered something in his ear. Jae-sun's expression changed. Just for a second. Something raw flashed through those frozen eyes, loss, rage, something I couldn't name, before his face went completely blank. Stone. He was made of stone. He turned and walked back toward the door, his voice carrying over his shoulder like a death sentence. Bring her. She comes with us tonight. If you are enjoying this video, kindly do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 2, They Didn't Drag Me. That was somehow worse. The men flanked me on either side, their hands hovering near my elbows without actually touching, guiding me toward a black SUV idling at the mouth of the alley. One of them opened the back door, and I climbed in because what else was I supposed to do? Run? I'd seen the guns. I'd seen the way they looked at Jae-sun, like he was God and executioner rolled into one. Reaper jumped in after me before anyone could stop him. The men froze. I watched their faces cycle through fear, confusion, and something close to panic as the massive Rottweiler settled onto the leather seat beside me, his body pressed against my leg like we'd known each other for years instead of minutes. One of them reached for Reaper's collar. The dog's lips pulled back, exposing teeth. The man yanked his hand away so fast he stumbled backward into his partner. Leave him. Jae-sun's voice came from somewhere behind me, cold and final. He stays with her. Nobody argued. The door slammed shut, sealing me inside with a killer dog and the faint scent of expensive leather. Moments later, Jae-sun slid into the passenger seat. He didn't look back at me. Didn't acknowledge my existence at all. The SUV pulled away from Han's garden, and I watched the restaurant disappear through the tinted window, wondering if I'd ever see it again. Wondering if I'd ever see anything again. The mansion sat high in the Hollywood Hills, perched on the edge of the city like a predator surveying its territory. It was beautiful. And cold. White marble floors stretched endlessly beneath crystal chandeliers. Black furniture punctuated the space like shadows given form. Everything was immaculate, expensive, and completely devoid of warmth. No photographs anywhere. No personal touches. Nothing that suggested a human being actually lived here. Just emptiness dressed up in money. I was escorted through a series of hallways, all white walls, all closed doors, until we reached a study at the back of the house. The men deposited me inside and disappeared without a word, closing the door behind them with a soft click that sounded like a lock turning. Jae-sun was already there. He sat behind a massive desk made of black wood, his jacket discarded, his sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle. His hands were folded in front of him, perfectly still, and those dark eyes tracked my every movement as I stepped further into the room. Reaper padded past me and lay down at my feet, his head resting on his paws. He didn't even glance at Jae-sun. Something flickered across the man's face. There and gone. Sit. I sat. Not because he told me to, but because my legs were shaking and I didn't trust them to hold me much longer. Silence stretched between us. He watched me the way a cat watches a mouse, patient, curious, deciding whether I was worth the effort of destroying. Do you know who I am? He finally asked. Yes. And yet you're not screaming. Not begging. Not crying. He tilted his head slightly. Most people cry. I don't have any tears left. It wasn't a lie. It wasn't bravado. It was just the truth, and something in his expression shifted when I said it, a crack in the ice, quickly sealed. That dog, he said, nodding toward Reaper, was a gift from my father. Imported from Seoul, trained by specialists who break animals until nothing remains but obedience and violence. He's killed on my command. He's maimed on my command. He has never shown affection to anyone. A pause. Not even me. I looked down at Reaper. His eyes were closed, his breathing slow and even, completely at peace with his head near my feet. He tolerates me because I feed him, Jae-sun continued. He chose you. That has never happened. Not once in 6 years. Maybe he's tired of being treated like a weapon. The words came out before I could stop them. I braced for anger, for violence, for something. But Jae-sun just studied me with that unreadable expression, like I was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. What's your situation? He asked. Don't lie. I'll know if you lie. I believed him. So I told him. Not everything, not the parts that would get me killed, but enough. The medical bills. The 3 jobs. The 4 hours of sleep. Marcus and his chemo, his stubborn optimism, his refusal to let me give up even when giving up felt like the only sane option. Jae-sun listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. $87,000, he said. That's your debt? Yes. I'll pay it. All of it. And I'll cover your brother's ongoing treatment, the best oncologists, the best facilities, whatever he needs. My heart stopped. Actually stopped, for one terrible, hopeful second. In exchange for what? You work for me. As Reaper's handler. He gestured toward the dog at my feet. You travel with me when necessary. You care for him. You ensure he remains manageable. I stared at him. You want to pay off $87,000 in debt so I can walk your dog? I want to pay off your debt so you can control the one thing in my life that has never been controlled. His voice hardened. Do not mistake this for charity. You have something I need. I'm offering a fair trade. Fair. There was nothing fair about this. About him. About any of it. But Marcus's face swam in my mind, thin, tired, bald from the chemo that was keeping him alive. I thought about the collection calls that came every day. The second mortgage I'd taken on our mother's house. The nights I spent crying in the shower so he wouldn't hear me falling apart. I wanted to refuse. Every instinct I had screamed danger, screamed run, screamed this man will destroy you. But my brother was dying. And Kang Jae-sun was offering to save him. I need time, I heard myself say. To think. He smiled. It was a cold expression, beautiful and sharp, like a knife catching the light. You have until morning. One of his men escorted me out. Different hallways this time, a longer route that wound through the endless maze of white walls and closed doors. We passed a door that was slightly open. I shouldn't have looked. I should have kept my eyes forward, my head down, my curiosity locked away where it couldn't get me killed. But I looked. And I froze. The room beyond was small, intimate. A sitting room, maybe, or a private study. But that wasn't what caught my attention. It was the photograph on the wall. A woman. Black, like me. Beautiful, with kind eyes and long braids twisted into an elegant updo. She was smiling in the picture, laughing at something just outside the frame, her whole face lit up with joy. Below the photograph was a small shrine. Candles. Fresh flowers. A silver name plaque that caught the light. Angela Monroe. Beloved. The world tilted. I knew that face. I knew that name. Angela Monroe had been my mother's best friend, a social worker who came to our house every Sunday for dinner and always brought Marcus candy even though Mom told her not to. She'd been kind and warm and full of life. And 5 years ago, she'd been killed in a hit and run. I was there. I saw it happen. I saw the car come out of nowhere, saw it strike her body, saw her fly through the air like she weighed nothing at all. I saw the driver's face, illuminated for one split second by the streetlight before he sped away. I saw everything. And then a lawyer came. A man in an expensive suit with a briefcase full of cash and a document full of words I didn't understand. $50,000 to sign an NDA. $50,000 to forget what I saw, to say nothing, to disappear. Marcus needed surgery. His first surgery, the one that bought us 2 more years before the cancer came back. We had nothing. No insurance, no savings, no hope. I took the money. I signed the paper. I buried what I saw so deep I almost convinced myself it never happened. Ma'am? The guard's voice cut through my spiral. We need to keep moving. I tore my eyes away from Angela's face and followed him on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. The ride home was silent. Reaper sat beside me in the back seat, his warm weight pressed against my leg, but I barely felt him. My hands were trembling. My whole body was trembling. Angela's photograph was in Kang Jae-sun's house. Displayed like something precious. Like someone he loved. He knew her. He must have known her. Maybe he loved her. And I knew who killed her. The driver's face was burned into my memory, no matter how hard I'd tried to forget. Young, handsome, arrogant even in the split second our eyes met. Korean features. Expensive car. I'd seen him again a few months later, on the cover of a magazine at the grocery store. Some article about wealthy families in Los Angeles, about dynasties and power and blood. The caption beneath his photo read, Kang Min-jun, younger brother of alleged crime boss Kang Jae-sun. The man who killed Angela Monroe, my mother's best friend, the woman whose shrine sat in Jae-sun's home, was Jae-sun's own brother. And I was the only witness. The SUV pulled up to my apartment building, and one of the men opened my door. I climbed out on shaking legs, Reaper whining softly as I left him behind. Someone will come for your answer in the morning, the guard said. I nodded. I couldn't speak. Could barely breathe. The SUV pulled away, and I stood on the sidewalk, watching its taillights disappear into the night. I'd just been offered a deal with the devil. And the devil didn't know that I was keeping a secret that could destroy his entire world. If you are enjoying this video, kindly do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 3. 2 weeks in the lion's den, and I was still breathing. Some days, that felt like a miracle. Marcus was at Cedars-Sinai now, receiving treatment from the best oncologists in the city. The bills were paid, all of them, past and future, wiped clean like they'd never existed. He was responding well to the new protocol, gaining weight, getting color back in his cheeks. Last time I visited, he'd laughed at something on TV, and the sound had been so unexpected, so normal, that I'd had to excuse myself to cry in the hallway. My brother was getting better. All it cost me was my soul. I lived in a guest cottage on Jae-sun's property now, a small, elegant building tucked behind the main house, surrounded by gardens I wasn't sure anyone ever used. It had a bedroom, a bathroom, a kitchenette I never touched because meals appeared like magic whenever I needed them. It also had Reaper. The dog slept outside my door every night, his massive body blocking the entrance like a furry barricade. He followed me everywhere, through the gardens, to the main house, even to the bathroom door, where he'd wait with the patience of a saint until I emerged. The guards gave us a wide berth. The household staff whispered when they thought I couldn't hear. The beast loves her. It's unnatural. It's witchcraft. It wasn't witchcraft. It was just understanding. Every morning, I trained with Reaper in the garden. Not attack commands, I refused to teach him those, and thankfully Jae-sun hadn't asked. Instead, we worked on trust. Sit. Stay. Come. Simple words that meant nothing except I see you. I won't hurt you. You're safe with me. He learned fast. Faster than any dog I'd ever known. Within a week, he responded to my voice alone, ignoring commands from the guards, from the staff, even from Jae-sun himself. That last part seemed to fascinate his master. Jae-sun watched me constantly. I'd feel his gaze on me across the garden, through the windows of the main house, during the business meetings I was required to attend. He never said much during those meetings, just sat at the head of the table while men in expensive suits discussed things I pretended not to understand. But his eyes would find mine, and something would pass between us. Something I couldn't name and didn't want to examine too closely. He asked me questions sometimes. About my life before. About Marcus. About my mother, who died when I was 20 and left me with a crumbling house and a teenage brother to raise. I gave him half-truths. Pieces of the real story, carefully edited to remove the one secret that could get me killed. He knew I was holding back. I could see it in the way he studied me, the way his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly when my answers didn't quite add up. But he didn't press. Not yet. I was in the garden when Min-jun arrived. Reaper and I had just finished our morning session, and I was sitting on a stone bench, letting the dog rest his head in my lap while I scratched behind his ears. The sun was warm, the air smelled like jasmine, and for one brief moment, I'd almost forgotten where I was. Then I heard the laughter. Loud. Careless. The kind of laugh that belonged to someone who'd never faced consequences for anything in his life. I looked up. And my heart stopped. He was walking across the terrace toward the main house, flanked by two men who hung on his every word. Tall. Handsome. Mid-20s, maybe, with sharp features and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Those eyes. Cold. Amused. Looking at the world like it was a game designed for his entertainment. I knew those eyes. I'd seen them 5 years ago, illuminated by streetlight, staring at me through the windshield of a car that had just killed a woman. Kang Min-jun, Jae-sun's younger brother. Angela's murderer. He turned his head, sensing my gaze, and our eyes met across the garden. Nothing. No recognition. No flicker of awareness. He looked at me the way he probably looked at every woman, appreciative, predatory, already calculating his angle of approach. He didn't remember me. Why would he? I was just a scared girl on a dark street, and he'd barely glanced at me before speeding away. I was nobody to him. A witness he'd paid to disappear. He smiled and changed direction, heading straight toward me. No. No, no, no. Well. He stopped a few feet away, ignoring Reaper's warning growl. So you're the miracle worker my brother's been hiding out here. The one who tamed the beast. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. My throat had closed completely. I'm Min-jun. He extended his hand. Jae-sun's better-looking brother. I forced my arm to move, my hand to clasp his. His grip was firm, lingering too long. Naomi, I managed. Naomi. He rolled my name around like he was tasting it. Pretty name for a pretty girl. How'd my brother find you? He doesn't usually have such good taste. Reaper's growl deepened. Min-jun glanced at the dog with amusement. Protective, isn't he? That's new. He leaned closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and sharp. We should get to know each other, Naomi. I have a feeling we're going to be seeing a lot of each other. He winked and walked away, leaving me frozen on the bench with bile rising in my throat. I barely made it to the bathroom before I threw up. My brother upset you. It wasn't a question. Jae-sun found me in the garden an hour later, sitting in the same spot, Reaper pressed against my legs like he knew I needed the comfort. I'm fine. You're lying. I looked up at him. He stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, watching me with those unreadable dark eyes. I'm not lying. He surprised me. That's all. Min-jun surprises everyone. It's one of his many talents. Something flickered across his face, frustration? Resignation? He's reckless. Careless. Everything I'm not. A pause. Did he say something inappropriate? He killed the woman you loved. The words burned in my throat, begging to be released. No, I said. He was just, a lot. I wasn't expecting him. Jae-sun studied me for a long moment. I held his gaze, praying my face wasn't betraying me. You're lying, he said again, softer this time. But I won't press. Not yet. He turned and walked back toward the house, leaving me alone with his dog and my secrets. That night, he invited me to dinner. Not a command this time, a request. A guard came to my cottage at 7 with a handwritten note, "Join me on the terrace." Please. The please undid me. The terrace was beautiful at night, overlooking the glittering sprawl of Los Angeles. A table had been set for two, candles, wine, food that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Jae-sun stood when I arrived. He'd changed out of his suit into something simpler, dark slacks, a black sweater that made him look almost human. Almost soft. "Thank you for coming," he said, pulling out my chair. Did I have a choice? You always have a choice, Naomi. We ate in silence for a while. The food was incredible, Korean dishes I couldn't name, flavors I'd never experienced. But I could barely taste any of it. Not with him sitting across from me, watching me like I was the most interesting thing he'd ever seen. "I want to tell you something," he said finally. "Something I don't talk about." I set down my fork. Waited. Her name was Angela. His voice was quiet, stripped of its usual coldness. Angela Monroe. She was a social worker. She helped at-risk youth, ran programs for kids nobody else cared about. She was. He paused, and for a moment, his mask slipped completely. Pain. Raw, devastating pain. She was everything. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. We were engaged. I was trying to leave the organization, trying to build something legitimate. She made me believe I could be different. That I could be good. A bitter smile. Foolish, in retrospect. What happened to her? The words came out before I could stop them. I already knew. I knew better than anyone. But I needed to hear him say it. Hit and run. 5 years ago. She was walking home from work, and someone. His hands tightened on the table. Someone ran her down like she was nothing. Left her to die in the street. My eyes burned. Angela's face flashed in my memory, smiling, laughing, full of life. Then broken on the pavement, her braids soaked in blood. "I've spent 5 years searching," Jae-sun continued, his voice hardening. 5 years hunting the person who took her from me. And I will find them, Naomi. I will find them, and I will make them suffer in ways they cannot imagine. He looked at me then, and the coldness was back, mixed with something that looked almost like hope. "Do you understand?" I nodded. I didn't trust my voice. I understood perfectly. I barely made it back to the cottage before the shaking started. Jae-sun didn't know. 5 years of searching, and he had no idea that the murderer sat at his dinner table, laughed at his jokes, called him brother. Min-jun had been hiding the truth this whole time. And I was the only person alive who could expose him. If I told Jae-sun, Min-jun would die. I had no doubt about that. Jae-sun would execute his own brother for what he'd done. But I'd taken the money. I'd signed the NDA. I'd stayed silent for 5 years while Angela's killer walked free. Would Jae-sun spare me? Or would I die too, punishment for my complicity? And if I stayed silent, if I kept this secret, I'd be protecting a murderer. Lying to a man who was quickly becoming more than my employer, more than a business arrangement. I was pacing my room, mind spinning, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I opened the message. The blood drained from my face. "I know who you are, Naomi. I know what you saw. Keep your mouth shut, or your brother dies before his next treatment. M." If you are enjoying this video, kindly do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 4. I didn't sleep. The text glowed on my phone screen until the words burned into my retinas. "Keep your mouth shut, or your brother dies before his next treatment." M. Min-jun knew. He'd always known. The realization crashed over me in waves, each one more sickening than the last. The lawyer who appeared 2 days after Angela's death. The $50,000 in crisp bills. The NDA written in language so dense I could barely understand it. I'd thought it was some kind of settlement, some rich family covering up an accident. But it wasn't a family. It was him. Min-jun, burying his crime and keeping a leash on the only witness. For 5 years, that leash had been invisible. I'd taken the money, signed the paper, and disappeared into my desperate, exhausting life. I was nobody. No threat. Not worth watching. Until I walked into his brother's house and tamed his brother's dog. Now I was a problem. I sat on the edge of my bed as the sun rose, rage and terror twisting in my chest until I couldn't tell them apart. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Marcus, thin and pale in his hospital bed, finally getting better, finally having hope. Min-jun knew his room number. His treatment schedule. His nurse's name. One word to Jae-sun, and my brother would die screaming. He found me the next morning. I was walking through the hallway toward the garden when a hand closed around my arm and yanked me into an alcove. My back hit the wall, and suddenly Min-jun was there, his face inches from mine, his charming mask completely gone. "You should have stayed forgotten," he hissed. His grip tightened until I felt the bones grinding together. "I'd have bruises tomorrow. 5 perfect fingerprints marking me as his prey. But you just had to walk into my brother's life. Stupid girl." His lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Now you're a problem. I haven't said anything. And you won't." He leaned closer, his breath hot against my cheek. Room 412. Cedar Sinai. Nurse Patterson works the night shift. Your brother gets his next infusion on Thursday at 2 p.m. My blood turned to ice. I have people everywhere, Naomi. Everywhere. One phone call, and little Marcus chokes on his own vomit. They'll call it a complication. Tragic, really. Cancer patients are so fragile. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I wouldn't give him that satisfaction. "What do you want?" "I want you to keep your mouth shut. I want you to smile and nod and play the grateful little charity case my brother thinks you are. And when he gets tired of you, because he will, you disappear. Forever. Do you understand?" I nodded. "Good girl." He released my arm and stepped back, the charming smile sliding back into place like a mask he could put on and remove at will. "It was lovely chatting with you, Naomi. We should do this again sometime." He walked away, leaving me trembling in the alcove. But beneath the fear, something else stirred. Something hard and cold and utterly unfamiliar. I wasn't the scared girl I'd been 5 years ago. I'd survived too much since then, buried my mother, raised my brother, worked myself half to death to keep us both alive. Min-jun thought he could break me with threats. He had no idea who he was dealing with. Jae-sun noticed. Of course he did. The man missed nothing. Over the next 2 days, I felt his eyes tracking me across the property. Watching as I flinched at sudden noises. Watching as I avoided hallways where Min-jun might appear. Watching as Reaper grew agitated, growling whenever Min-jun came within 50 feet of me. He cornered me in the garden on the 3rd night. "Has someone threatened you?" Direct. No preamble. Just those cold, beautiful eyes drilling into mine like he could see straight through to my secrets. I wanted to tell him. God, I wanted to tell him everything, about Angela, about Min-jun, about the weight I'd been carrying for 5 years. I wanted to watch the justice finally happen. But Marcus was still at Cedar Sinai. Still vulnerable. "No," I said. "I'm fine." "You're lying." "I'm not." "Naomi." His voice softened, and something in my chest cracked. I know when someone is afraid. I know what it looks like when someone is trapped. Whatever is happening, I can help. But only if you tell me. I looked into his eyes, those frozen lake eyes that held so much pain, and lied. "Nothing is happening. I'm just tired. Adjusting. It's a lot." He studied me for a long moment. I held my breath. "I don't believe you," he said finally. "But I won't force you to tell me." He turned to walk away, then paused. "Just know this, whoever has you this frightened, they're not as untouchable as they think." That night, I made a plan. I wasn't going to be a victim. I wasn't going to let Marcus die. And I wasn't going to let Angela's murderer win. I dug out the NDA from its hiding spot, the one document I'd kept all these years, shoved in a box of my mother's things. I photographed every page. Then I sat down and wrote everything I remembered about that night. Every detail. The car model. The license plate I'd glimpsed before it sped away. Min-jun's face, illuminated by streetlight. I made copies. Hid them in 3 separate locations: my cottage, a storage unit across town, and an encrypted email I sent to myself. If I died, the truth would come out. That was my insurance. But I needed to protect Marcus first. The next morning, I called the hospital and requested an emergency transfer. Security concerns, I told them. A credible threat. They didn't ask questions. The bills were being paid by Kang Jae-sun, and his name opened doors that would have stayed locked for anyone else. By noon, Marcus was at a private facility in Pasadena, registered under the name David Williams. New room. New nurses. New everything. When I visited that evening, he looked confused. "What's going on, Nay? Why did we move?" "Just precautions," I said, squeezing his hand. "My new employer is paranoid about security. It's nothing to worry about." He searched my face, and I hated lying to him. But I'd rather have him alive and suspicious than dead and trusting. "Okay," he said finally. "But you'd tell me if something was wrong, right?" "Of course." Another lie. They were piling up like bodies. Min-jun found out 2 days later. I was in my cottage when the door slammed open. He stormed in like a hurricane, his face twisted with fury. "Where is he?" I backed away, heart pounding. "I don't know what you're." "Your brother." He advanced on me, his hand closing around my throat. "Where did you move him?" He shoved me against the wall, and my skull cracked against the plaster. Stars exploded across my vision. "You think you can outplay me?" His fingers tightened, cutting off my air. "I am Kang family. I am untouchable. You're nothing. A nobody who should have stayed invisible." Black spots danced in my vision. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Then I heard the growl. Low. Deadly. A sound that meant violence was seconds away. Min-jun's eyes went wide. Reaper lunged. The dog hit him like a freight train, 70 pounds of muscle and fury. Min-jun screamed as teeth sank into his forearm, tearing through fabric and flesh. Blood sprayed across the cottage floor. He kicked, flailed, finally managed to wrench free and scramble toward the door. Reaper snarled and lunged again, but I grabbed his collar. "Enough," I gasped. "Enough, boy." Min-jun staggered to his feet, clutching his shredded arm. Blood poured between his fingers, dripping onto the pristine floor. "This isn't over," he spat. "When I'm done with you, you'll wish my brother had never found you." He stumbled out into the night. I sank to the floor, Reaper pressing against me, and tried to remember how to breathe. The summons came the next morning. A guard appeared at my cottage door, his face carefully blank. "Mr. Kang would like to see you in his study." Immediately. I followed him on legs that felt like water. Reaper walked at my side, his body tense, sensing my fear. Jae-sun was waiting behind his desk. He didn't stand when I entered. Didn't speak. Just watched me with an expression I couldn't read. But his eyes. His eyes were different. There was something volcanic in them. Something barely contained. On the desk in front of him was a file. Manila folder, thick with papers. "Close the door," he said. I closed it. "Sit." I sat. He slid the file toward me. I opened it with trembling hands. Photographs. A black sports car with a dented hood. Repair records from a body shop in Koreatown, dated 5 years ago. A police report, accident on Western Avenue, victim deceased, driver unknown. Angela's death. "My security team found something interesting," Jae-sun said quietly. "They've been watching my brother. Following his movements. Tracing his past." I couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. That car belonged to Min-jun. The repair records were buried, but not well enough. The police report was supposed to disappear, but someone kept a copy. He paused. "Someone always keeps a copy." His eyes locked onto mine, and I saw it there, the violence coiled inside him, waiting to be unleashed. Tell me, Naomi. His voice was soft. Deadly. What do you know about the night Angela died? The question hung in the air between us. Truth or lie? Life or death? If you are enjoying this video, kindly do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 5. I told him everything. The words poured out of me like blood from a wound, unstoppable, painful, necessary. I told him about the night I was walking home from my shift at the diner, taking a shortcut through the side streets because my feet hurt and I wanted to get home to Marcus. I told him about the car that came out of nowhere, the sickening thud of impact, the way Angela's body flew through the air like she weighed nothing. I told him about her face. The way her braids fanned out on the pavement. The blood pooling beneath her head while I screamed for help that never came. I told him about Minjun's face, illuminated by streetlight for one terrible second before he sped away. The shock in his eyes when he realized what he'd done. The way that shock turned to calculation as he decided to run. I told him about the lawyer who appeared 2 days later. The briefcase full of cash. The NDA written in language designed to confuse and intimidate. The threats about what would happen if I talked, to me, to Marcus, to everyone I loved. I told him I was 21 years old. That Marcus needed surgery. That I had nothing, no money, no family, no power. That I signed the paper because I didn't know what else to do. I told him about Minjun's text messages. The threats against Marcus. The plan to make my brother's death look like a complication. I showed him the evidence I'd gathered. The photographs of the NDA. The written account of that night. The proof I'd hidden in 3 separate locations. When I finished, my voice was raw and my face was wet with tears I didn't remember shedding. Jae-sun was silent. His face was stone. Completely unreadable. His knuckles were white where he gripped the edge of his desk, the tendons standing out like cables beneath his skin. I waited. This was it. The moment he decided whether I lived or died. I'd taken money to stay silent about his fiancée's murder. I'd protected her killer for 5 years. In his world, that probably warranted execution. I found I didn't care anymore. The truth was out. Whatever happened next, at least I wasn't carrying this weight alone. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked. Just slightly. Just once. But I heard it. You were a child. He looked up at me, and for the first time, his eyes weren't cold. They were anguished. Devastated. Alone. Desperate. He used that against you. I should have. What? Gone to the police? A bitter sound escaped his throat. My family owns the police. Minjun knew that. He knew no one would believe you. He knew you had no power, no resources, no way to fight him. His hand slammed against the desk, making me flinch. He preyed on you because you were vulnerable. That's what he does. That's what he's always done. He stood abruptly and walked to the window. His back was to me, his shoulders rigid. My brother killed the woman I loved. His voice was quiet now, stripped of everything but pain. He's been at my table every night since. Laughing. Living. While she rots in the ground. His shoulders shook. Once. Then he went completely still. I didn't move. Didn't speak. Just let him have this moment of grief, this moment of processing a betrayal that cut deeper than any knife. Thank you, he said without turning, for telling me the truth. He summoned Minjun that afternoon. A business meeting, allegedly. Something about territory disputes that needed immediate attention. I watched from my cottage window as Minjun's car pulled up to the main house, saw him swagger inside like he owned the world. He had no idea what was waiting for him. A guard appeared at my door. Mr. Kang says you should stay here. No. The guard blinked. Ma'am. I need to see this end. I pushed past him, Reaper at my heels. I've earned that much. He didn't try to stop me. The basement was cold. Concrete walls, concrete floor, a single fluorescent light casting harsh shadows across the room. I'd never been down here before. Never wanted to know what happened in places like this. Now I stood in the corner, Reaper pressed against my legs, and watched the beginning of the end. Min-jun stood in the center of the room, confusion slowly giving way to unease as he took in the setting. Jae-sun sat in a metal chair, the file open on a small table beside him. What is this? Min-jun laughed, but it sounded forced. Some kind of interrogation? I thought we were discussing the Koreatown situation. Jae-sun said nothing. Just picked up a photograph and held it up. The car. Min-jun's car. Dented hood, 5 years ago. I don't know what that is. Another photograph. Repair records. Those are fake. Someone's trying to frame me. A police report. Angela's name highlighted in yellow. Min-jun's face went white. Brother. His voice changed, became placating. Whatever you think happened. I don't think. I know. You can't believe. Min-jun's eyes found me in the corner. Something shifted in his expression. Rage. Pure, unfiltered rage. You believe this bitch over your own blood? She's nobody. A broke waitress who spreads her legs for money. Jae-sun moved. I didn't even see it happen. 1 second he was sitting in the chair, the next Min-jun was on the ground, choking, Jae-sun's hand wrapped around his throat. Confess. Jae-sun's voice was terrifyingly calm. Everything. Angela's murder. The cover-up. The threats against Naomi and her brother. Confess, or I will make your death last for days. Min-jun clawed at his brother's hand, his face turning red, then purple. Confess. Min-jun gasped, tears streaming down his cheeks. I didn't mean to. Jae-sun's grip loosened just enough to let him speak. I was drunk. The words came out in a rush, pathetic and desperate. I was coming from a party, I wasn't paying attention, and then she was just there. You hit her. And then you left her to die. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. You knew who she was. Jae-sun's voice dropped to a whisper. You saw her face. You knew she was mine. Min-jun's eyes darted away. Look at me. Jae-sun grabbed his chin, forced his head up. You knew. Didn't you? Silence. Didn't you? Yes. Min-jun sobbed. Yes, I knew. I saw her face and I knew she was the woman who was taking you away from us. From the family. You were going to leave, going to go legitimate, going to abandon everything our father built. So you killed her. I didn't, it was an accident. You hit her. You saw who she was. And you drove away. Jae-sun's voice cracked again, and this time he didn't try to hide it. You let her die alone in the street. You let me spend 5 years searching. And you sat at my table every night, laughing, while I drowned in grief. Min-jun had no answer. Just sobs. Jae-sun released him and stood. He straightened his suit, adjusted his cuffs. When he spoke again, his voice was controlled. You will leave this city tonight. You will never return. You will never contact me, or anyone I care about, ever again. He looked down at his brother, this man he'd raised, protected, loved, with something that might have been pity. If you do, I will kill you myself. That is my mercy. It is the only mercy you will receive. Min-jun scrambled to his feet and fled. The door slammed behind him, and the basement fell silent. Days passed. I found Jae-sun at Angela's shrine, placing fresh flowers beneath her photograph. He didn't turn when I approached, but he knew I was there. He always knew. I thought killing him would bring peace, he said quietly. But mercy was harder. It cost me more. I stood beside him, looking at Angela's face. Kind eyes. Warm smile. A woman who'd dedicated her life to helping others. She would have wanted mercy, I said. That's who she was. Jae-sun turned to look at me. Really look at me. For the first time, there were no walls between us. No masks. Just two broken people standing in the wreckage of their pasts. You could leave now, he said. You're free. Marcus is safe. Your debt is paid. I know. Will you stay? I took his hand. His fingers were warm, strong, trembling slightly. Reaper lay at our feet, calm and watchful. I'll stay. 6 months later. The Angela Monroe Foundation opened its doors on a sunny Tuesday morning. A program for at-risk youth, funded by Jae-sun's legitimate businesses, staffed by people who actually cared. Angela's legacy, finally given the honor it deserved. I ran it. Turned out I was good at helping people. At seeing their pain and meeting them where they were. At being the person I wished someone had been for me when I was 21 and terrified. Marcus was in remission. He'd started community college, was talking about becoming a nurse. He visited the foundation sometimes, helped with the kids, made them laugh. Reaper was gentle now. The violence that had defined him was a distant memory, replaced by a calm steadiness that made children giggle when he licked their faces. And Jae-sun. Jae-sun was mine. As much as a man like him could belong to anyone. His world was still dangerous. My past still haunted me sometimes, in nightmares where Min-jun's face loomed out of the darkness. But we faced it together, two broken people who had found something unthinkable in each other. Hope. I stood on the terrace where we'd had our first dinner, watching the sun set over Los Angeles. The sky was painted in oranges and pinks, the city glittering below like a sea of stars. Jae-sun's arms wrapped around me from behind. Reaper's warm body pressed against my legs. Everyone feared him, I whispered, looking down at the dog who had changed my life. But all he needed was someone brave enough to see past the teeth. Jae-sun pressed a kiss to my temple, his lips warm against my skin. So did I. I know you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more videos like this, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Also share your thoughts in the comments section below and drop your thoughts in the comments section below and share this video to family and friends. The end.